With a loud bang, a chair fell apart in Michael's hands. His partner quickly stepped in between him and the informant, trying to calm Michael down as much as possible. Today's operation was a complete failure. Whether it was Rich, who went to deliver the goods, or the other team that searched his temporary residence, they didn't find anything unusual. They couldn't even find a single coin, let alone the at least $5,000 the informant mentioned, neither on Rich nor in the room. A failed operation meant that Michael would lose face in front of his colleagues. The hierarchical and professional relationships within the Federal Tax Bureau made this special department highly competitive, beyond what outsiders could imagine. Everyone wanted to be an agent rather than an investigator, and Michael had a very good chance of promotion. However, if the failed operation disturbed Rich and Fox, leading to the failure of the follow-up plans, Michael would become a laughingstock and should not expect any promotion within the next 2 or 3 years. Most people tend to blame others when they encounter problems and troubles. Michael attributed this failure to the informant's unreliable information. So he invited the informant to this room and, in a fit of rage and roaring, lifted the chair and slammed it hard on the informant's back. So he invited the informant into this room, and then, amidst angry shouts and roars, he lifted the chair and forcefully slammed it onto his back. "Do you know how much I lost because of your wrong information?" He struggled to break free from his partner's interference, pointing at the informant who looked in pain on the table. The informant was a newspaper carrier. The major sources of information in Sabine City and other cities were controlled by professional intelligence gathering agencies and newspaper carriers. Newspaper carriers would inform the newspapers about any unusual things they found, which was another part of their job besides delivering newspapers. They may not necessarily be rewarded for this, no money, no rewards, but the newspaper carriers still willingly did it in exchange for some harsh favors. Some smart investigators and detectives also had similar informants, and a newspaper carrier did not just serve one boss. When it came to trading information, it was not about justice and moral values, but about money. There was no need to portray oneself as too noble. There were people like Michael, but not many. Taking out his anger on the informant was a foolish move. The newspaper carrier's facial muscles twisted and knotted due to the chair smashing into his face, his eyes gleaming with hatred. This hatred quickly subsided. He had leverage in Michael's hands. He had previously been involved with a young girl, and something happened, which was coincidentally discovered by Michael. Michael took the girl away, leaving behind some evidence, such as a recorded confession and a crime scene with his fingerprints. "I didn't lie. I gave him nearly $1,500 for the child I had in my hands. I swear I didn't lie," he pleaded for himself, praying for all this horror to pass quickly. He seemed to have forgotten that there was once a girl who also prayed like this but didn't get the outcome she hoped for. Michael pushed his partner aside and walked to the edge of the table. He grabbed the newspaper carrier by the hair and punched him in the face. His partner stood aside, not intervening further as long as Michael didn't use any objects. At least, bare-handed attacks wouldn't kill anyone, but using objects could. This was just to prevent any accidents, not because his partner didn't want Michael to resort to violence. Of course, if someone lost their life, there were ways to solve the problem, but it would be a bit more troublesome. There were many loose ends to tie up. Sabine City is a small town where everyone knows each other, whether it's the investigation bureau, the tax bureau, or the court. They wouldn't sentence a promising government official to death for someone who walks on the gray line. There is a good chance of being acquitted in court, as minor accidents can happen during the process of capturing fugitives and people can accept that. With 1 punch, 2 punches, 3 punches. After repeatedly punching, Michael finally stopped when the reporter's face became swollen and distorted. He shook his hands, picked up a cup of water from the table, and poured it over the reporter's head. The water slid down his hair, instantly clearing his blurry consciousness. However, the intense pain and numbness in the affected area left him confused. It feels very painful, but he doesn't know exactly where the pain is. It's your job to arrange it. Send him $5,000 in change this afternoon, and then we will catch him in the act. Michael quickly came up with a plan. He looked back at his partner, who nodded slightly to indicate agreement with his plan. From a judicial perspective, this kind of behavior could potentially be considered enticement to commit a crime, which is illegal. Moreover, any actions and evidence collected from the suspect during this process would not hold legal validity. However, since it's a small town, where everyone knows each other, there's no need to have any unpleasantness between them over something that won't cause a stir outside. Sometimes, 4 frontline investigators, manipulating the chain of evidence slightly to ensure criminals are brought to justice smoothly is considered normal behavior, and everyone is accustomed to it. Michael grabbed the reporter's hair again, pulling it back so he had to look at his own swollen face. Do you understand? The reporter's evasive gaze dissipated some of Michael's anger and other unexplainable emotions. He was still the Michael who couldn't be refused, not the guy who suddenly became timid and retreated. Yes. I understand. Michael let go of his hand. The wet hair left some water stains on his palm. He wiped his hand on the reporter's clothes, then patted his swollen face, leaving with a satisfied smile amidst the reporter's screams. The room returned to calmness, and the reporter's eyes gradually changed from intense hatred, hostility, and madness to docility. He slowly stood up, but the excruciating pain made him hunch over. He picked up his hat and pressed it on his head, paused for a minute or two, and left the room. On the other side, Rich, who had returned to his temporary residence from the laundry, immediately called the police upon seeing the ransacked room. Yes, he called the police. He didn't silently pretend that nothing had happened, even though he knew what had occurred there. The police came quickly and examined the scene. They immediately made a judgment, especially since Rich said he had lost $500. It was clearly a case of burglary, and the amount was not insignificant. As for how to solve the case, it would depend on Rich's luck. As the police officer said, no one knew who had entered, and there were no witnesses nearby. If the culprit didn't continue committing crimes and was caught, it would be difficult for Rich to recover his losses. Basically, this case would end here. As the police were about to leave, Rich suddenly provided some additional clues. Officer. The police officer responsible for recording at the door diverted his attention from his colleague and looked at Rich. Yes, I remembered. I also lost a gold ring, which was a gift I was planning to give to my girlfriend, engraved with, "My beloved Catherine." He sighed with regret. I should have kept it on me. The police sympathized even more with this young man. He wrote down this small detail at the bottom of the scene transcript and reassured, this is an important clue. If that guy tries to sell it soon, we might just find it. Is there anything else you want to add? Rich shook his head. No, that's it. Thank you for coming, sir. The police put away his pen, holding the clipboard. He adjusted his hat brim and said, stay tuned for good news, young man.